The Young Person's Guide to Poetic Terrorism. Poetic terrorism is a concept heralded by writer Hakim Bey. It represents a radical departure from conventional modes of artistic expression, challenging prevailing norms, subverting authority, and unleashing the transformative potential of creative intervention in the public sphere. Rooted in the belief that art possesses the power to incite change, provoke reflection, and disrupt complacency, poetic terrorism emerges as a potent force for social critique, cultural rebellion, and personal liberation. At its core, poetic terrorism thrives on acts of subversion, defiance, and disruption that transcend traditional boundaries of art, politics, and discourse. By harnessing the power of metaphor, symbolism, and aesthetic defiance, poetic terrorists engage in acts of creative rebellion that destabilize systems of control, challenge dominant narratives, and awaken individuals to new possibilities beyond the confines of societal norms. Banksy's subversive street art interventions challenge authority, expose injustices, and disrupt urban landscapes, with provocative imagery and political commentary that incites dialogue, critical reflection, and cultural resistance, embodying the spirit of poetic terrorism in reclaiming public spaces for creative expression and dissent. Culture jammers like the Yes Men engage in acts of poetic terrorism by staging elaborate pranks, hoaxes, and satirical performances that expose corporate greed, political corruption, and social injustice, using humor, irony, and spectacle to provoke consciousness and prompt action in the face of systemic exploitation and deception. The Dadaists and Surrealists of the early 20th century pioneered forms of poetic terrorism through nonsensical poetry, absurd performances, and disruptive art practices that challenged the status quo, defied logic, and dismantled traditional notions of artistry, paving the way for future generations of artists to subvert conventions, question authority, and reimagine reality through creative acts of defiance. The Temporary Autonomous Zone, Ontological Anarchy, Poetic Terrorism. In this seminal work, Bey explores the concept of poetic terrorism as a strategy for disrupting oppressive systems of control and engendering moments of liberation, autonomy, and creativity through artistic interventions that defy categorization, challenge hegemony, and inspire radical transformation. Technosis, myth, magic, and mysticism in the age of information. Davis's examination of technology, culture, and countercultural movements delves into the roots of poetic terrorism as a form of cultural resistance that utilizes art, mysticism, and symbolic action to subvert dominant paradigms, awaken consciousness, and usher in new modes of being and knowing in a technologically saturated world. Within the realm of poetic terrorism, we uncover a world teeming with possibilities for creative rebellion, subversive expression, and transformative action that beckons us to reimagine art's potential as a tool for resistance, liberation, and awakening in a world hungry for change, truth, and the unbridled power of the human imagination to manifest new realities, challenge oppressive forces, and illuminate the path toward collective emancipation and individual empowerment through the radical alchemy of poetic terrorism. Examples of poetic terrorism in action. Activists unfurling banners with powerful messages in unexpected locations, such as bridges or buildings, to disrupt complacency, challenge authority, and incite dialogue on pressing social issues like climate change, human rights, or political corruption. Flash mobs organizing spontaneous performances in public spaces to challenge norms, disrupt routines, and create moments of connection, dissent, or celebration that disrupt the urban fabric and provoke thought on topics like consumerism, inequality, or surveillance culture. Satirical comedians like Jon Stewart, or cartoons like The Onion, using humor, satire, and parody to critique political figures, media narratives, or societal trends, exposing contradictions, hypocrisies, or injustices with wit, irony, and subversive humor that prompt critical reflection and spark conversations on current events. DIY zines created by underground artists, writers, and activists to share alternative perspectives, marginalized voices, and radical ideas outside mainstream channels, fostering community, resistance, and solidarity through grassroots publishing, art making, and cultural production that challenges dominant discourses and amplifies divergent narratives. Artists like Marcel Duchamp, Yoko Ono, or Banksy drawing inspiration from Dadaist and Surrealist traditions to create provocative, enigmatic artworks that defy categorization, confront conventions, and challenge viewers to question reality, authority, and cultural norms through disruptive acts of artistic subversion that blur the boundaries between art and life, chaos and order, meaning and absurdity. Through these diverse examples of poetic terrorism in action, we witness the power of art, creativity, and collective action to disrupt, challenge, and transform the world around us, inviting us to reimagine art's potential as a tool for resistance, liberation, and awakening, in an age hungry for change, truth, and the unyielding spirit of creative rebellion that propels us toward new possibilities, renewed purpose, and transformative futures shaped by the radical alchemy of poetic terrorism. The concept describes a strategy of using art and performance to disrupt the mundane, robotic flow of everyday life. Unlike traditional activism or literal terrorism, its goal isn't physical harm or political demands. It's about creating a moment of aesthetic shock or divine chaos that snaps people out of their routine. The core principles. The element of surprise. Poetic terrorism should ideally occur in a place where people don't expect art, like a subway car, a supermarket, or a public park. Anonymity. The practitioner should remain invisible. The act should feel like a natural disaster of beauty or strangeness, rather than a calculated PR move for an artist. The wow factor. It is designed to leave the witness with a sense of wonder, confusion, or a sudden realization that the world is more mysterious than they thought. No victimization. Bey argued that if the act doesn't change someone's life in a positive, mind-expanding way, it has failed. It should be an act of love, even if it's unsettling. Examples of poetic terrorism: leaving treasures like handwritten poems, strange objects, or gold-painted stones in public places for strangers to find. Staging a sudden, bizarre ritual in a corporate lobby and disappearing before security arrives. Guerrilla gardening, planting wildflowers in the middle of a bleak urban intersection. Replacing all the labels in a grocery store with surrealist descriptions or philosophical quotes. The ultimate goal. The intent is to create a temporary autonomous zone, T.A.Z., a space where for a few minutes the laws of the state and the logic of the market don't apply, and only the extraordinary exists.